Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Glossy Philosophy and my name is Jansen Binman. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Give this video a thumbs up because today we are doing a book talk on Tracy Borman's Elizabeth's Women. I am very excited to talk about this book. Not only is Tracy Borman one of my favorite historical authors, she also wrote the Thomas Cromwell book that we covered a few years ago, but I'm also very excited to talk about it because when I was looking for a book on Elizabeth I, it was very difficult to find a book that had anything to do with Elizabeth herself, let alone the women that actually influenced her and her queenship. It felt like a lot of these books about her life concerned the male representation and just like her virginity itself, whereas this one really breaks it down from her mother all the way to her death. So before we get into the books, I do want to kind of get your brains thinking on the past couple of book talks from Emma and the Bone Shard Empire #2 and Elizabeth's Women, because this is the third book in almost like a series that have nothing to do with each other of strong women and strong female leaders. And even though Emma isn't a queen and she's not leading a battle or anything like that, she still is high in society like the other two women. And of course, Elizabeth I actually existed and the other two are fictional characters. But I just think it's a beautiful celebration of women with these three books and their metamorphosis going from one thing into another, whether that's just a normal person to becoming an empress, a princess becoming a queen, or like not becoming a princess, becoming a princess, etc., etc. But also just becoming a young lady, growing into becoming a woman and being strong and independent. And I love that all three of these women, fictional or not, were able to control their lives with and without men as they so chose. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, make sure that you check out the last two book talks as well. And let's now dive into Tracy Borman's Elizabeth's Women. So Tracy Borman, first and foremost, is a fantastic author. If you caught the Thomas Cromwell book, you know that she writes really, really well. She likes to get you involved in the history. So she will put in the actual letters that she found the most interesting from the cast of characters that she's putting in the book, and will oftentimes put their own wording in there without translating them unless it's just so difficult for modern readers to understand. That really allows you as the reader to kind of grab your own understanding of these historical people and not just take her word for it. I also think she does a great job of presenting the facts without getting too gossipy. Although I will say in this book it does get a little gossipy, but Elizabeth's court was crazy. So back to Tracy Borman. She is now the chief executive of the Heritage Education Trust. She's a joint chief curator for the historic royal palaces, and she often appears on television and helps out with the BBC history by writing articles and just kind of contributing in that way. She also has a new book, which is very relevant to this one, called Anne Boleyn and Elizabeth I, the Mother and Daughter Who Changed History. I am absolutely going to check it out and I will report back later. So now that we know a little bit about Tracy Borman and how amazing she is, let's dig into the book. Like I said a little bit before, when I've read, this is my third Elizabeth book, and I was thrilled when I saw The Women of Elizabeth I, because you don't often get to hear women's stories, especially from back then. Yes, we know a little bit about Elizabeth I. We don't know everything, that's impossible, but we do know a little bit about her mother, Anne Boleyn, who marries King Henry VIII, or doesn't marry, depending on which side you're on. And they have Elizabeth I, and things just get crazy from there. And I love that Tracy Borman takes us from the beginning, from Anne Boleyn, and really paints this picture of what her mother was like and how much she actually interacted with Elizabeth and how she might have shaped her into the queen that she became. Now, Elizabeth I, for the most part, it seems like once she becomes queen, she is well liked by a majority of her citizens. Maybe not not so much the majority of the court. I feel like the court was very split, at least according to Tracy Borman. And her citizens are split too because they've just been through some crazy stuff with religion. And Elizabeth's sister, Mary Tudor, or Bloody Mary, they are just wondering, is Elizabeth going to be any better? They don't even know if Elizabeth is technically like legit royalty or if she's not considered actually in the bloodline because of Anne Boleyn and because of her awful trial and her beheading and all of that. So Tracy Borman really breaks it down, and she creates this picture of Anne Boleyn as this doting mother, which was very unusual in a queen back then, and somebody who really wanted to make sure that her daughter was taken care of, no matter if they had sons or more daughters or whatever. She wanted to make sure that Elizabeth was written into the law immediately. Now, after Anne is beheaded, a lot of this stuff kind of goes back and forth in Parliament, whether, again, Elizabeth is legit or not legit. And then, of course, a son comes after that from the next wife, which is Jane Seymour. And there are even more stepmothers. So there is a moment, there is a chapter on all the stepmothers that Elizabeth I had and some things that she learned and how she was treated by each of these women. It is very interesting that Anne of Cleves, who doesn't get a lot of historical playtime, actually becomes a very big influence for Elizabeth I, and they become pretty good friends. And I love that because Anne of Cleves, we know, is very smart because she's one of the few women who survived Henry VIII and just his craziness with women. So it's great that she was able to use her smarts and survive Henry VIII and also help out his daughter, who she didn't have to, and a lot of the other stepmoms didn't. But she does. She takes Elizabeth I under her wing and shows her how to be diplomatic and shows her how to stand up for herself without getting into trouble. And this is very important because at this moment, again, Elizabeth is kind of teetering on that princess, not princess line. We have the last wife, which is Catherine Howard, and Catherine Howard does a great job of bringing the whole family together for King Henry VIII. But after King Henry passes away, then things get crazy. Poor Elizabeth I's life is just crazy. It's crazy from the beginning, like until she becomes queen and she's able to actually do something about her own life and have a little bit more control. There is a moment when Elizabeth I is taken into the Tower for questioning of some scandal that happens because of Catherine Howard and her husband. It's gross and very upsetting, so just be forewarned about that. But obviously she makes it, and she has to even go through her sister's reign, Mary Stuart, and tread cautiously while also building up support for her own queenship, which she knows is going to come, and if it doesn't come, she's probably going to force her way in because Elizabeth has been raised to know that she is important, she is special, and she is smart. She's smart like her mom, Anne Boleyn, and she knows, just like Anne Boleyn did, she knows how to use what she has to create a story, not only visually, but also how to communicate very, very well. Anne Boleyn gets a really bad rap for a lot of things, but she was a master communicator and she knew how to put herself together, which was a huge communication tool for women as well. There are so many stories where people are comparing Mary Tudor to Elizabeth and just saying how they almost wish Elizabeth was queen instead of Mary, purely based on what they look like and how they handle themselves in front of others. So eventually, Mary Tudor has basically done a horrible job of being queen. She's really separated her people, the love of her people. She's also caused a lot of chaos and destruction and death as well in England. So when she passes away, people are thrilled to have a new queen, and it is Queen Elizabeth. She is named by Mary Tudor to come onto the throne. What happened to the brother? He passes away long before any of this. So he's not even in the line of succession. Elizabeth becomes queen, but it doesn't stop there. The craziness doesn't stop there. She has to deal with all of these men that are not used to a strong woman leader. She has to deal with rewriting laws, which honestly Queen Mary made a little bit easier, so thank you for that. But Mary didn't want to actually be queen. She wanted somebody to lead the country for her, or at least in partnership. Elizabeth wants none of that. She wants to be the sole person who is leading this country. So much so that she declares very early on that she refuses to marry and she will be the Virgin Queen, not only metaphorically, but also actually. Whether Elizabeth was a virgin when she died, nobody knows. And you know what? It doesn't even matter. The obsession about this is truly incredible. And with all the amazing things that she did and was able to hold on to England for as long as she did, as well as she did, like, get over it, everybody. It really doesn't matter. So now we get into the meat of Elizabeth's reign, and we're dealing with her courtiers. We're dealing with faithful and unfaithful people who are serving her. We're dealing with the men who are surrounding her in every possible way. We are also dealing with her cousin, who is Mary, Queen of Scots, who is also really trying to become the Queen of England as well as the Queen of Scotland. Now, Mary, Queen of Scots is very similar to Mary Tudor because they both do not wish to rule as just the sole sovereign. They want a king, they want a man to help them rule or to basically rule for them. They're very stuck in what a woman's role is during this time period. And again, Elizabeth is saying, I'm having none of that. Like, I know I'm strong. I know I'm really smart. I'm smarter than all of my cousins and everything. I understand what's going on in the world, and I'm going to make a change for the better and for my people. There's a brilliant line from Tracy Borman where she says, Mary, Queen of Scots, was a woman first, and Elizabeth was always queen first. And when I read that, it struck me as so profound, and also hearkening to The Queen by Andrew Morton that we read last year, where Elizabeth II was also, it felt like, a queen first and a mother and a woman and all of those things much after that. The fact, again, that Elizabeth I was able to hold on to her queenship for so long with all of the death threats, with all of the nonsense that's going on in her court, with just everything, is really incredible. Did she do it all right? No. Did she make mistakes? Yes. Is she a person? Yes. But she truly believed in herself, and she did the best that she could. I also really appreciated that as Elizabeth gets older, she has more energy than a lot of her younger courtiers. So she goes for a walk almost every morning into her 60s, which back then was a very old age. She's also dancing at all the parties. There's a lot in here where courtiers and other diplomats are making fun of Elizabeth I because at this point her teeth are black because she has a sweet tooth and she's not taking care of her teeth. She's lost a lot of her hair from illness. Her skin isn't as nice as it used to be. She's wearing wigs. She's trying to be youthful, and there's also a story where she doesn't have a looking glass or a mirror for 20 years as soon as she starts getting wrinkles and she has no idea what she looks like. I mean, like, what woman doesn't want to feel a little bit younger? I felt like that was so human of Elizabeth, and I thought that was really cool. What I didn't like about Elizabeth I was that she could be very cruel, just like her father Henry VIII. And once she was done with you, she was done with you, and she really did not want to mess around. So if you got on her bad side, especially as a woman, she was way harder on the women than she was on the men. If you got on her bad side, it was game over for you. She would make your life really awful. But if you could show that you were there for her, if you were loyal, then she would treat you very, very well. That being said, when you have to be there for her loyally, that means that you give up everything else and you show her the same loyalty that she's showing the people of England by staying all by herself. I also found that in and of itself very interesting because she must have been so lonely and so not only scared from all of these attempts to take away not only her life but also her queenship. But I just didn't ever get the feeling that she had maybe one or two people that she could talk to on an actual human level where she didn't have to be Queen Elizabeth all the time. And what a lonely life that must have been, especially because she chose not to get married ever. And that also reminded me of Queen Elizabeth II and just her dedication to the crown. Both of these Elizabeths are women that should be researched more and talked about more for just their dedication to their job and all the sacrifices that they made to get the job done. So that is the book talk of Elizabeth's Women by Tracy Borman. Thank you guys so much for watching this book talk. I love reading about strong women who are underestimated and rise far above expectations and kill it. I think that's another great thing to have in your back pocket when life gets you down or other people get you down. I do fashion videos every Wednesday, beauty videos every Friday. On Friday, I am doing this makeup look, which is the makeup look that Cate Blanchett wore in 1998 on the red carpet after she did Elizabeth. So it's going to be a great one. Stay tuned for that. Make sure you are following me on Instagram and watching the shorts in between for tips and tricks to make your life easier and a little bit more glossy. And I will see you very soon in the next one. Bye.